Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ayomide, and if this is your first time here, you are most welcome. On this channel I post sewing tutorials and pattern drafting tutorials. As you can guess from this video, this tutorial is on how I made this beautiful mermaid dress that has an underbust corset detail with a BASQUE waistline. It is also a dress with straps. So guys, if you want to learn how to do this, then you should see this video up until the very end. Now let's jump straight into this tutorial. To get started, we are going to be altering our patterns. Now let me say that the very first pattern that I drafted for this dress while recording, or rather at the point of editing, I realized that the video did not record well, so I had to do another one after I was done. So you might notice some little differences, but it is still the same pattern. It's just a replica of what I used, and I only just did this for some part of the front. Okay, so now for this I have my basic bodice block. It is extended, and it is extended to a length of 34 inches. It is a combination of both my basic bodice and my skirt pattern. The skirt pattern is the length of 18 inches from the waist, which I'm going to be extending later on. To get started, the first thing I'll do is to determine the neck depth, because this is an off-shoulder dress with straps, and I'm using a neck depth of 5 inches, which I'm going over to rule. Once that is done, I'm going to be getting the midpoint of my shoulder slant, which was about 4.5 inches, so half of that should be about 2.25 inches, and I'm connecting that to my bust point. Once that is all done, the next thing I'll do is to take out that around the area that crosses the neckline, and I'm using 1.5 inches for that. So I'm taking 1 inch to the center front region and half an inch to the side front region, and I'm also connecting that to my bust point. Once that is all done, I'll go ahead and contour the underbust region, and to do that I'm taking 0.75 inches away from the underbust. I'll use my hand to draw the shape of the underbust as I desire. Because this dress is going to have an underbust detail, so what I'm doing next is to shape the underbust the way I want, and to do that I'm going to be marking 2 inches upward from the underbust line, and this measurement matches up with my bust dart, but that is fine. So if yours matches up, it's still fine. I'm marking 2 inches upward, and I'm going to be shaping it inward towards my dart. To proceed, I'm going to be redrawing my armhole, and in order for me to do that, I'm going to be marking ½ inch below my chest line. I would rule that into a straight line. Then I'm going to be using my pattern master to redraw the armhole. Once I'm done with that, the next thing I will do is to work on the neckline, and I wanted a sweetheart neckline for this dress, though not so deep. So I marked 1 inches below the 5 inch mark that I marked earlier, and I used my pattern master to smoothen it into a curve from one dart leg, as you can see that I have done. So yours can be deeper than this. So guys, this is my center front and this is my side front. I'll go ahead and cut out my pattern from just the underbust area and taking it through the shaping that I did along the underbust. So for reference purposes, I'm going to be calling this part of my pattern the bust area. So if I mention the bust area, you should know that I'm talking about this pattern that I just cut out. This dart here is going to be taken out entirely, but not now, later on when I want to work on this pattern later on. Now to move on to the waist region of this pattern, so I'm going to be calling this part the waist region. I'll label this the underbust line, and I'll label this the waistline, so that we do not get confused. Okay, so now the first thing I want us to note is my dart. So bringing back my pattern, you will see that my underbust dart ended here, and it is about 1.75 inches, meaning I used 1.75 inches for that along the underbust. So I'll just write that on my pattern and keep it because I'm going to use it later on. To create the back's waistline, from the waistline I'm going to be marking 2 inches downward, okay, while from the center front region I'll go ahead and proceed to mark 5.5 inches downward, and I'm going to be using my pattern master to create the shape I want for my back's waistline. So the back's waistline is usually, it starts a little bit lower from your natural waistline, because sometimes when you start from your waistline, it's usually too high and sometimes it looks really funny. Yes, sometimes it does looks really funny. So I'm just going over to cut this pattern out, and this part will be labeled the waist area. Moving on, this remaining part of my pattern would be for the skirt for the front, and I'm going over to label the center front and also indicating that I am supposed to extend the length to 46 inches. All in all, guys, I have the bust area, I have the waist area, and I also have the skirt parts. Now let's move on to modifying the bust and the waist area. Starting with the bust area, I'm going to be using a different color of marker pen to highlight the areas where I have my dart. And I'm using a different color of marker so that we do not get confused later on. So this part I'm highlighting is the region or the part where I'm going to be cutting out, because I need to eliminate my darts. So I'll eliminate the dart at the upper bust and that at the lower bust. But the first thing I will do first of all is to close my dart, and to do that I will need to slash open one dart, which I've gone ahead to do, and I'll grab my bust dart and close it. And to do that, I would also secure the bust dart with a masking tape. I'm doing that at the back so that this pattern does not become rough. And then I'll go ahead and take out every other dart that I have on this pattern. I'm done eliminating all the darts, and here is what I have. So what I'm going to be doing is I will label my pattern. I have my center front, and I have this part here as the underbust. I also have my side front, and I have this part here as the underbust. It's very important for you to label so that you do not get confused while cutting and while stitching. Now before I do away with this pattern and move on, if I try to place my patterns together, making sure they align at the chest line, you realize that the side front is higher than the center front. So I will need to smoothen this, and I just went ahead to use my marker pen to smoothen this inward so that they can be equal. Okay, so, and that's because of the darts we took out. That's why one is longer than the other. So now let's move on to the waistline. Moving over to the waistline, for the first thing we need to do is to consider our dart. So on the underbust region, my dart is 1.75 inches, while at the waistline my dart is 2 inches. So I'm just going to be keeping that aside. The next thing I will do is to draw my style line, and I'm going to be drawing 2 lines. I just drew this according to my discretion. There was no measurement. I drew 2 slanted lines just the way I deemed fit and how best I thought it to be. So guys, on those 2 lines is where I'm going to be taking my dart. Remember that the underbust region, the total dart I took was 1.75. So I'll need to divide 1.75 by 4 and then place whatever I have on either side of my dart. So I'm just going over to place the value I have on either side of the style line that I drew. At the end of the day, I should have a total of 1.75, which I used for the darts. For the waistline, I have 2 inches for my dart. So dividing 2 inches by 4, I should have 0.5. So what that means is that on either side of the style line I drew, I would need to place 0.5 inches, and 0.5 inches, and on either side of the second line I would also need to place 0.5 inches. At the end of the day I should have 2 inches. So once that is all done, I'll go ahead and connect my darts from the underbust to the waist and close up the darts at the back's waistline, and I will also repeat likewise for the other side. Close up the darts at the back's waistline and then connect from the underbust to the waist. I'm done, but before I go ahead to cut this out, I will label this as my center front. I would also label it as waist 1. I'll label this part as waist 2 and label this part as waist 3 because it can get confusing later on. These are all of my pattern pieces. Once I was done, this is what I have. Now let's move on to the back. For the back, I've also gone ahead to mark my neck depth of 5 inches, and I'm going to be marking a neck width of 5.5 inches, and this was what I used for the front. I don't think I said the total neck width I used for the front, so I used 5.5 inches for the front and 5.5 inches for the back as my neck width. I'm also going over to redraw my armhole just like I did for the front. Once I'm through with that, I'll proceed and then draw in my darts. So I'm marking 3.5 inches away from the side back, and I'm taking half an inch on both sides for my darts, and I'm just going over to use my pattern master to draw in the dart legs. Once that is all done, I would also go over and modify the neck depth for the back, and I'm marking about 1 inch, or rather I think I took about 1.5 inches below, and I'm using my pattern master to create that, to connect that to the armhole area. So I'll just go over and cut out the upper part, that's the bodice of the back first of all, before we move on to the skirt part. For the skirt part of the back, I'll just go over and label this as my center back and also label this as my side back, and then I would also go over and draw in my dart for the back. So guys, I've done a number of shaping at the back of the skirt, and I have numerous tutorials on my YouTube channel on how you can shape the back of your skirt. I'm going to be putting the links in the description box so that you can watch and learn. I'm done cutting out my back pattern, and here is what I have. I have the upper bodice and the skirt part, and I will need to indicate on the skirt part that I need to extend the length on my fabric when cutting to 46 inches, just like I did for the front. So these are what I'm going to be using to cut out my fabric pieces. Now moving on to cutting, I've placed my front pattern, the front skirt pattern, on the bridal satin, the doll face bridal satin that I'm using, and I've added half an inch to the back's waistline and 1.5 inches to the side. And this dress is a mermaid dress, so I have done my normal extension as it pertains to a mermaid dress. I have like 2 tutorials on my channel on how you can draft and cut a mermaid dress. So at the length, I have 2 lengths. The first length here, the longer one, is for the lace dress, because my lace dress would be 2 inches longer than the bridal satin lining, while the next one would be the length of the bridal satin. So once I'm done using this to cut out my lace, I'm going to be trimming off the 2 inches extension, because the lining would be shorter than the lace fabric itself, and I'll do likewise for the back also. So you can see the mermaid extension that I did. For the front bodice, I have gone ahead to cut out, and this is what I have. I have my doll face bridal satin here, which will serve as a support fabric because the lace is transparent and we need something to support it. And I also have my regular lining that I'm going to be using to finish off the raw edges while I'm done sewing. I've done likewise for the side front also, so I have my doll face satin and I also have my regular lining. For the waist area also, I've gone ahead to cut out. So I have my waist 1, waist 2 and waist 3, and I cut out the doll face bridal satin and also the lining for each of them. And I've also gone ahead to apply interfacing on all of them. Also for the bust area, I've gone ahead to cut out my lace fabric because I'm going to be using the lace fabric only at the bust area and for the skirt part, but I'm not going to be using it at the waist area. So I have my center front and I also have the side front as it pertains to the bust area. Moving on, I've also got my skirt fabric pieces here. I have my doll face bridal satin, I have the main fabric, that's the lace, and I also have the fabric I'm going to be using to line, and the length of the lining is about 25 inches. I didn't do a full length, and that's because I don't want this dress to be so bulky. I don't want that. Also for the back, I've gone ahead to cut out my back. I have my doll face bridal satin, which will act as a support fabric to the lace. I've also got the lining also, and I have the lace itself. So the center back has a tail extension at the back, and I have a tutorial on this actually. Like I said, I'm going to be putting a link in the description box so that you can watch a tutorial on how to draft a skirt pattern with a tail extension at the back. Moving over to the drafting of the sleeve, I'm going to be rolling a straight line that would serve as the starting point of the sleeve, and this sleeve is going to be an off-shoulder sleeve. The first measurement is going to be the sleeve width, which I got from deducting the total sum of my neckline, the front and back neckline, from my round shoulder measurements. So I have a detailed tutorial on my YouTube channel on how to draft an off-shoulder sleeve. I'm going to be putting that in the description box below. After that, I'm going to be marking 2 inches downward, and I'll connect that to a straight line, after which I'm going to be marking my chest line measurement on that line. Thereafter, I'm going to be marking the length of the sleeve, which is going to be about 6.5 inches thereabouts. So I use 6.5 inches for the length, and I'm going to be creating a curve from the chest line all the way down to the length. So that's what I'm going to be working with, and I'm also going to be drawing my armhole from the sleeve width all the way down to the chest line. So guys, the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trimming off the sleeve along the hem first of all, after which I would fold it along the upper part. Okay, so don't trim it along the upper part yet. Then I'll proceed to trim this along the armhole. Once that is done, I would open it up, mark my desired seam allowance of 0.5 inches, and then square it down and trim off the excess that I have. So this would help your seam allowance to stay in shape when you want to sew. So to cut out, I'm going to be cutting this region on fold, and I'm also going to be cutting the sleeve on a bias. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be doing. This is all guys for the pattern drafting and the cutting tutorial. The sewing tutorial is going to be uploaded in the next video. Make sure you also watch that. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial up until this very end. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, kindly click on the subscribe button below. And until the next sewing tutorial, have a great day ahead and stay blessed.